And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us here at the Inphase podcast. I'm Tony Manette, and this is
Dan.
My best friend.
Your best friend. Wow.
In the whole world.
It keeps evolving, ever changing. Yeah, best friend.
Right. Next week he'll be my business partner.
Well,
stay tuned.
It's all downhill from there. Is all downhill from there.
So, Danny and I had some fun adventures over the weekend. Before we get there, let's just re-wrap real quick because we were tackling some pretty big stuff around social media, stuff that has impacted our lives and our families and our friends and our community, stuff that's becoming more and more well known. There's more data, more research coming out. And we just wanted to kind of get a friendly voice out there to folks who, Danny's at the stage where his kids are kind of coming into their adulthood. My kids are well into their adulthood and moved out. And so just kind of the different phases of the experiences there and what to be prepared for, at all those different levels. So that's what we were trying to do this week, however. So we kind of covered the problem.
Yeah.
Right, and a lot of the data last week. This week we want to talk more about maybe things that folks can do, right?
Yeah, because I went back and watched that episode we posted, and a couple of times I was just like you could just see I was just glazing over.
As soon as I get home, I am busting every phone into pieces.
I know, dude. I was fine, but I'm just like, oh man, what's coming?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, let's find some things we can help people with.
Yeah.
Right. Surrounding that. So.
Right. And maybe even implement in our own lives. Right. So, so that's where we are. So before we dive in, though, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing? We did have a pretty busy weekend, and you were playing Rockstar as usual. How are you feeling? How are you doing? How was the?
I'm old. I'm sore.
I'm old.
I like to. So Dan and I are both in. Dan's in several bands. I'm in a couple of bands, and one of the bands we're in, I get to kind of jump around and act like a ding-a-ling quite a bit, and I'm kind of the monkey up front that people get to throw peanuts at, and then turns out the next day I have to double down on the Aleve.
Yeah.
And that's where I am. Yeah.
So we had a show, and thankfully for this band, I'm the sound guy. I didn't have to jump around. But
he's our MVP though, because he makes us sound 1,000 times better.
What did you say during setup? Somebody had said something like, "We're not using any delay tonight," and you said something like, "I don't know, Danny can't mix without that." Something you were just like, well. That's his tool. That's the tool he has.
Well, that's the only magic that makes me sound any better, I think.
I will tell you, carefully placed reverb and delay will cover a multitude of sins.
Absolutely. Yes.
For the performer and for the sound guy.
Right. And that guy's right here.
We had a show on Saturday night down in Central Kentucky. And I took it as an opportunity to take a motorcycle trip.
Yeah.
Talked about motorcycles last week. Wait, you ride? Wait.
You ride? Wait, dude.
Yeah, so Friday morning, one of my best friends, because you are the best friend. There's different it's like
how can you be one of your best friends and I'm the best friend? Yes, so it just sounds like there's a bucket of best friends that we have.
Right. Which are just friends?
No, they're best. You got the friends bucket. These are your best friends bucket.
Right.
And
who's the bestest?
That's the thimble.
It's the thimble. So me and my other best friend, I'm just debating on whether or not I should say his name. Yeah, he was in an episode of ours.
Yeah.
So
say
Chris
it.
Courts.
Chris Courts
was
fan.
in an episode of ours.
Great guy.
We went to the Kentucky Cat. Well, it's the Kentucky Adventure Tour or Trail or whatever, and it's a series of off-road / on-road trails that are connected, and it's all mapped out. And there's like main 1 through 4, and then there's some labeled hard 1 through 4, or maybe more than that.
So they rate them.
Yeah.
On difficulty.
Yeah, but it's all public land. It's the Daniel Boone National Forest. It's not like you have to pay to get in or there's a guide. There's just some dude is passionate about it, so he'll post about it on Facebook like, hey, Main 1's a little muddy. Don't get out there messing up the trail today, please, or whatever. But really, you could do whatever you want.
Yeah.
So we did. Friday, we rode from Cincinnati to southeastern Kentucky and started getting on the Cat. And we rode we rode all day, and then we just found a place to hang up the hammocks on Friday in the Daniel Boone National Forest, which was great. And then
that's not a reference to underwear, by the way. That is their sleeping apparatus.
Yeah, legitimately. we wanted to pack as let's.
Yeah,
you have to clarify because sometimes things come out of left field. So yeah, we're sleeping in our hammocks, and I'm trying to pack really light, and I look at the weather, and I'm thinking it's going to be maybe mid-50s at night. Mm-hmm. It never is this perfect. It was supposed to be like between 15 degrees at night, and so it was like mid-50s to 70, which was like perfect riding weather, right? Well, it got a lot colder than that on Friday night. And I just had a hammock. I didn't pack a sleeping bag. I didn't even pack a long sleeve shirt.
Oh my goodness.
So I'm literally hypothermic in my tent.
Oh my gosh.
I got something, at one point I went out to go start a fire so I could get warm in the middle of the night, and something starts just nuzzling it's just booping me in the hammock. I'm in this hammock. I'm like, wrapped up tea bag, like a 200-pound tea bag, right? And this guy's whatever it is, and I didn't think it was a bear because you hear the grunt and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But I was like, well, it's either a dog or a deer, you know?
Oh, really? Okay, yeah.
Because it's just like figuring me out.
Maybe a coyote or something.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. It wasn't. Didn't feel like it was being aggressive. It was just curious. I let it do that for a while, and then it left. And then I got up and made a fire. So that was Friday night, and then Saturday, on like an hour of sleep, we got up and we rode all the main routes on the Cat, and then we did one called Hard 4, which is like a mountain straight up like this and rocks, and you're riding a motorcycle with all your gear. And went down a couple times.
Pretty technical then, huh?
And probably one of the hardest things I've done in a very long time. And we got through that, and then we went and did music.
Yeah.
And I got to, after destroying my body, I got to just sit there with an iPad and a light beer.
Nice. And, it was a great evening. It really was.
To jump around like a monkey. So I talked about all of that. I could have Reader's Digested that. But what I want to say is we had that packed weekend. Mm-hmm. Not once did I look at my phone or social media.
Nice. There you go. Right.
Yeah. And
which we had talked about last week is a prevalent part of your life, right? I mean, it's something that's it is. And when you do the stuff that we do, this podcast and several bands and stuff, you kind of don't eat if you're not on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or Twitter, because you're constantly having to market yourself. And plus it initially it's designed to be a communication tool, right? I mean, initially it was designed so that if you were going to put an event together, you could broadcast that out literally globally, or a GoFundMe so
I say that it is a big part of my life. And I think the main reason is just because I would be less, and I'm not uber successful, but I'd be less successful as a musician or anything that we do without it. But I did want to make an addendum to something. Last week I said that it was high adrenaline producing activities. I think it's not adrenaline, it's dopamine. So
So let's go back there, because if I recall, what you said was that there seemed to be events in your life that similarly fill the gaps of when you're utilizing social media on your device, right? There's something that similar. So that I think what you were trying to say was that there are times I don't need it because my mind is super entertained by what else is going on around me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I wanted to make a delineation between being entertained or being, because I realized it's not just adrenaline, like I'm about to die kind of stuff.
Yeah, right.
It's dopamine. It's like, this is great. You know, what I'm doing is great. And I make that distinction because I quit smoking whenever I had the heart thing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm realizing that my social media intake went way up after I quit smoking.
Really?
Yeah, which is weird. And then you get out on the trail and stuff, you always pack a pack of cigarettes.
Mm-hmm. Sure. We love our tobacco when we're outside.
Yeah, or like, you know, dip or whatever. And so I had one or two on the trail as like a glass of champagne.
Yeah.
Like you just climbed a mountain.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then on top of that, sorry, we're hearing stuff. On top of that, you know, just doing stuff that I've been dreaming to do for years since I, you know, got more into riding and seeing other guys do this thing, watching documentaries about adventure riding and dual sporting and things like that. And, you know, so the whole time I'm feeling high. You know?
Yeah.
And I think there is a difference. I think it's less about adrenaline for me and maybe a lot of people and more about the dopamine.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a hard turn to make.
Yeah.
Right? You know, because when I came home, I almost had a crash. I mean, yesterday I was a jerk. I was a total jerk. Some things happened at my house that were totally out of my control, and it totally put me sideways in terms of just ruined my day. Like, it was like, man, now I've got to fix this. Like, the garage door broke. It was really nobody's fault. It was like 5 people's faults or whatever.
Yeah, right.
But I just got so upset about it.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. So, I recognize, like, it's tough because I came back to the real world on Monday, and you know, there's my phone. I can just check out.
Yeah.
So I got done fixing the garage door, and I just sat. We have a little sitting area in our living room or our bedroom, and I just sat in there and doom scrolled for 30 minutes, and I'm like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
What am I doing? So
yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It is interesting.
You know, a couple of things that I want to make sure that we don't miss out on, and I think might be worth repeating, is the level of what I would call importance or severity, right, around what exactly is happening out there. Because in the analogy that I think that has really stuck with me is the fact that if I came to our society and said that between the ages of, let's say, 14 and 24 or 26, 1 in 10 of those there was something coming. It's a virus, let's say, or, to stick on this COVID theme or something like that. But there's this virus coming, and 1 in 10 of our young adults, our future, if you will, are going to go into depression, have anxiety, and have serious thoughts about harming themselves to the point of committing suicide. And that 1 in 5 are going to have these serious thoughts of harming themselves and through depression and anxiety. 1 in 10 are actually going to try it.
Yeah.
In the next year.
We would be kicking and screaming. We'd be shutting things down.
Yeah.
No phones.
Yeah.
We can't. You have to. It'd be like, I can imagine, like, you can't use a cell phone under the age of 21.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Nobody. There's a social media or cell phone curfew.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, they would probably go as extreme as like, you have to get mental health clearance before you're able to download this app, kind of thing. Like, I can envision things like that. Like, if we would take if we took it as seriously as other things.
Right.
That 1 in 10 kids are going to commit suicide?
1 in 10 kids are going to try to commit suicide. Yeah. So 1 in 5 are going to think about it seriously, and 1 in 10 are going to try it. So you've heard of Simon Sinek, and I've become a big fan. I think Simon's got a fantastic style. Simon, if you're out there, feel free to call us. We'd love to have you on the show. Yeah. But he does I think he does a really good job from I think a real place of passionate concern and kind of a patient. Everything's going to be okay, but we got to start working on some things. And he's got a couple of fantastic talks out there. You can find them on YouTube. Just look up Simon Sinek. I think one of them is the millennial question or something like that. And it's a little 15, 20-minute blurb. He's up on stage giving a little talk with another guy, kind of an interview thing. And he talks about how social media, how, it's affecting this demographic, this age group, Gen Z, millennials, et cetera, that are in their formative years, right? And he starts to use analogies around things like there's now a very well-known connection between early alcohol use and alcoholism. Right, and so when you start to utilize things that can be addictive in nature, right? There's a much higher chance that in their formative years, if they're experimenting with that, they're going to come back to it in a much bigger way, in kind of an addictive way. He does a much better job of kind of framing that up. Excuse me. One of the things, though, that he mentions is if you look at this, right? You got to be a certain age to drink. Got to be a certain age to drive, right?
Yeah.
You got to be a certain age to go into the military. And a lot of states, have a gun, right? Those kinds of things. Really, really important stuff. And here you are in your formative years dealing with something that's super crazy addictive, right?
Yeah.
And, oh, by the way, like it's unlimited. You know what I mean? I get all choked up. Good Lord.
Yeah, totally. And it's unfettered.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, so our children have unlimited use, right? So and most people who have dealt with addiction, who've been through some kind of process, know that you've got to get the addictive things out of the house.
Yeah. And here's the problem for us is that getting the addictive things out of the house, it sidelines the whole family. It sidelines our communication. It sidelines our ability to track our kids. It sidelines, like if I get my phone out of the house, you know what I mean? Like we don't even have a landline anymore.
Yeah.
And these things, our computers, our phones, our social networking, the way we communicate for our jobs and our families are they're just all the same ball now.
Yeah.
So when I hear get the addictive thing out of the house.
Yeah. Way easier said.
Right.
Than done. These things are now tools we've become very we've learned how to utilize them. I'd like to think that we're resilient enough that if the power went out for a week, we wouldn't all starve to death.
Well,
right.
Have you seen some of the mouth breathers walking around?
Like DoorDash. Just because DoorDash isn't going to work doesn't mean you're going to starve to death. Right?
Yeah.
Right. But
some people will.
Yeah. Well, that's
will.
Possibly. But I think some of the things that are, there is a great design behind a lot of this stuff. I mentioned it's a communication tool, right? It's designed. You have unlimited information. When I was young, when I was your age, I used to have to go to a library to learn something. Now you just dial it up, and you hope the book was there, right? Those kinds of things. So
there was one library, Library of Congress.
Right.
Yeah, back then.
Yeah. And so we would, you had encyclopedias and stuff like that. Now you have this amazing unlimited fountain of knowledge, a wealth of knowledge, right? You can communicate. You and I can keep in touch with each other throughout the day. You can keep in touch with your kids. You can track your kids. You can follow. So there's some really amazing things that are really neat out there, right? Some people might argue that it's dulling our lives. It's kind of putting a callus over some of our senses or our abilities to do things, right? Like survive in a crisis or some other stuff as well. I know early on when I was traveling a lot for work, you had to buy a map. Like if you went to a new area, you literally had to figure out how to get from the airport to your hotel to your client spot, and it was on a piece of paper or a plastic card, right? You weren't dialing it up on your phone, and you were trying to figure out, and there weren't construction updates and traffic updates and everything else, right? You were just getting from point A to point B on a piece of paper.
That kind of reminds me of a story. My Aunt Evelyn, it's my dad's aunt. I mean, that's how she's really up there.
Well, yeah.
Well, she passed away in like 2006, I think, 2007. But she was telling me this story this one time about her, I don't know if it was her mom or her dad, my grandma's parents. She said that they found out about TV dinners. TV dinners came and my Aunt Evelyn's mom, my great grandmother was like, or one of them, let's just say it was her. My great grandmother was like, ain't nobody gonna be able to cook, and I give it 10 years, nobody on this planet will be able to cook with those daggum TV dinners. You know?
Yeah. I remember begging my mom to get us TV dinners because I'm like, oh my God, that looks so cool.
Yeah. The microwave, and it's like the Salisbury steak, and the edge of it gets real crusty.
Yeah,
but it's, my point is to say that there's a lot of fear wrapped up in like innovation sometimes, and we've talked about a lot of fear and crazy stuff, but there's a lot of hope. There's a lot of great stuff that we can do. We can utilize social media for, we can utilize technology for, and we already know those things. Everybody knows those things. And I think, just in my own reflection and taking notes, one of my biggest points was we have to make a change. And that change doesn't mean getting rid of whatever, a device or an app or service, but we have to make a change. We have to change the trajectory a little bit, and I don't think it's too late for anybody of any age, but I think the most important change we have to make is with generations before or after us. We have to plant the trees that'll produce shade that we probably won't ever see, right? And so I don't know if there's a good replacement, so to speak, but there might be some different ways that we can, quote, weaponize social media for good. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I hate to use the term weaponize, but that's what it is now.
Yeah. We're in a fight.
Yeah, and to say put up our defense, that doesn't. I think we need to be more proactive.
Yeah.
We need to figure out a way to make a change.
And change, that's a big word, right? I mean, change, everybody was like, oh, change, gosh, I got to go to the gym. I got to lose 20 pounds. I got to, replace the furnace. I got to, whatever it might be. Change is always, and I know in corporate America, change is, it's what everybody's trying to do. It's really, really, really hard.
Yeah.
Right. It's hard.
Everybody's trying to be interrupters.
Yeah.
Well, but it could be so simple as, and I've done this, I just stopped commenting. Altogether.
Yeah.
I will like something, but I rarely comment.
Do you feel compelled? Like when you're on social media, is that part of your mindset is that like there is a social responsibility, I guess, if you will, to like stuff that you like or want to approve of or something like that?
I think definitely there used to be. For me now, it's rarely anybody that I'm close with.
Yeah.
Somebody that I've never met puts up a cool moto video. I'll like that.
Yeah.
I think now, and last week I was talking about the algorithms and, kind of tricking the algorithms, tricking myself to say that word. But like, I know that the more stuff, the stuff that I like is going to feed me. Stuff that I intentionally like is going to feed me.
Right.
And also it's watching me watch things, and it responds accordingly too. But, so yeah, that's another reason I like things.
Yeah.
Or interact in that way. But one of the ways that I saved myself a lot of grief was just I stopped commenting.
Yeah.
Because almost like 9 times out of 10, when I commented on somebody's social media content, it was like getting blackout drunk and then having to try to remember it the next day.
Oh, really?
Like that kind of, there was just, I commented, and then you get in this flurry of messaging back and forth publicly. And then later, maybe a week later, a day later, or a year later, the memory pops up about that post or whatever, and you're like, oh, I can't believe you know what I mean? I just saved myself any of the miscommunication or the misread tone or anything.
Yeah. Interesting.
And I found that I was less snarled. I was less hooked, less snared.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So that's a trick that I've done. Like, just don't comment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't comment at all, or very rarely.
Was there any juice that you were getting out of dialoguing? So it almost sounds like you were commenting in the expectations of a dialogue that was maybe going to happen.
No, it was somebody posted something, and everybody else was liking it.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And I was like,
it wasn't like somebody commented back, "You're an idiot." Oh, what are you talking about? Wait a minute, this is why. And okay, yeah.
Well, maybe sometimes.
Check this out.
But
right? Okay.
I wasn't getting any juice from it. It was probably a lot of like that fear of missing out. You know what I mean? Somebody, one of my friends would post something, or somebody I followed would post something, and I'd be like,
interesting.
Everybody's liking it, and I guess subconsciously I'd be like, I'm inserting myself into that experience.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And then
interesting.
And then you get that, you turn into everybody's a one-upper, everybody's an expert, everybody's a one-upper, and everybody's been that person's friend longer than you, and vice versa.
I've been in the moon.
Yeah, and I've been in the moon. So those kind of conversations. What I found myself getting wrapped up in. And then another trick that I'm doing now, I'm not commenting. I also, every time a memory pops up, I just go ahead and delete it. Just go ahead and delete it.
Really?
Unless it's like something, like a picture of my kids, like a moment that I chose to capture, and anything with my family, I only ever post or have posted so that my dad, who lives several hours away, or my stepdad, or my mom, or any of those people, they could see it, because they aren't, they didn't have a very like regular interaction. Yeah. Like, I didn't want them to miss anything. That's a great tool. I could post something.
Right.
But anything else, it's like, I would comment, I would post, like I would tweet or put a Facebook status during Final Four, and it would just be, well, this sucks. Or something stupid,
Yeah. I think you're talking about University of Kentucky losing so early in the tournament all the time.
Yeah.
Which kind of does suck sometimes. Yeah. But anyway, back to,
So just delete that stuff. Anything that's not meaningful. Yeah. And most of it's not meaningful.
Gotcha. Interesting. That's interesting. So you're, it sounds like, let me kind of throw this back at you. You're starting to identify ways to safely use.
Yes, but first I'm walking back other mistakes. It's almost like I'm in when you're in AA, when you're in recovery, what's the making amends? Yeah. Like I'm making amends with myself.
Yeah, gotcha.
Walking back some stuff, just deleting stuff.
But you're also, it's really important that you bring that up, because you also have to own it. Mm-hmm. Right? You have to own the fact that you're actually doing this stuff. Mm-hmm. Right? And that maybe it's not great for you. Right?
Well, that everybody's doing this stuff.
Right.
And that it's weird when you stop commenting, and when like when you're not very active, when you're just like a camper, you're just camping out and watching stuff, which again isn't great. But when you're not getting in the mess of it, people just are like, "Are you okay? I haven't heard from you in a while."
Really?
I'm like, "What do you mean? We sat next to each other in church last week.
Yeah.
We played together.
Yeah.
Like, you just haven't seen me chirping on social media."
Yeah. That's interesting. That's really interesting.
So that's some things that I'm doing, or have done.
Let's keep talking about some of those, if you don't mind, because there are. So depending upon, so you're obviously an adult. You've got 3 kids of your own. You've been married for 15 years or 20 years.
No.
Right?
Almost.
Almost.
Yeah.
And great wife, Allison, if you're listening, you're wonderful.
Oh, she's listening. She has to listen.
Yeah, she has to, right. Interesting enough, I asked my wife today, "Hey, did you hear the last episode?" "Oh, I am. I'll listen to it tonight." But we were kind of busy. I know Becky's very, very busy. She weeded the whole yard today, believe that or not. The whole yard.
I believe it.
Right. She came in. I'm like, "Whoa, what happened?" "I was just out there weed." She's out of breath. I don't know how weeding makes you out of breath, but yeah, anyway. So a couple of things that I think are important to note is that there obviously are different age ranges and different levels of control. And so one of the things, like really good general rules for maybe everybody, right, to kind of apply. So I think you just mentioned a couple of them. Oh, yeah. Right. So be really aware how you're using this, right, and why, right, and do you get any benefit out of it? Is it making you feel better? Is it helping you in any way, right? We alluded last week to the fact that somehow our society seems to be falling into what I would call like a trick, that it is acceptable for you to be controlled by your emotions and displaying those emotions all the time, right? Just being very open with your emotions or controlled by your emotions, which I allude to the fact that I don't know of a healthy family setting, friendship setting, or work setting where that's possible, right? So there's some things that maybe we need to start looking at that might maybe push back on, hey, wait a minute, I got to start controlling some things, right? I can't just live out loud all the time, right? And so those two are great, because I'm going to definitely try some of that stuff myself. Right. I know in some of the things that I looked into, there were some common themes around, like, don't take the device in the bedroom. And there's a couple of fingers there. One is, obviously, it's going to interrupt your rest, right? It's a huge distraction to whatever you're doing. It's not healthy for you to prepare to sleep and have, screen time, right? It makes it harder for you to fall into healthy sleep, and there's all kinds of data out there around blue screens and stuff, and ambient light and all that stuff, right? So that's bad. It's not a great way to start your day. So you reach over and grab your phone, right? That's your first thing. There's a lot of data out there now about maybe take 15, 20 minutes, have a routine.
Eat a grapefruit.
Yep, eat a grapefruit. Think, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting that ideas don't come up when you're utilizing your brain actively around a specific thing or subject. They come up when you're sitting there and you're thinking, right? And think about how idea-driven our existence is, right? And so we've technically, especially this generation coming up, has less and less idea time, right? I mean, to this point, 2.5 hours a day, right, of just idea time, right? So figure out ways to not have the device in the bedroom. Also, I'm just going to say it, pornographic utilization is at an all-time high it's X factor higher than it's ever been.
And it's not just the church talking about how terrible it is.
No.
Like this isn't about like it's not. First of all, porn's terrible.
Yeah.
And it's not about like holier than thou. It's like legitimately, porn is terrible for your mind.
Terrible.
It's terrible for your relationships.
Yep.
We're not going to get in the debate on, the people in those scenarios that are creating content. That's like whatever, because people argue like it's empowerment and all this stuff. We can't even afford to get into that portion of it. Just the fact that the consumption of pornography is literally poison.
Yes.
I mean, contemporary non-Christian comedians and philosophers and actors are all, like, hey man, you look great. Why do you look so good? Well, I quit looking at
using porn. Yeah. Yep. And it's amazingly prolific. There are all kinds of stories about families discovering the utilization of porn in their households with very young teenagers that had unlimited access at some point for years before they discovered what was going on.
Yeah.
We had a scenario where when we very first, our school system, when they distributed workbooks, Apple, what was the Apple, the PowerBooks. They distributed PowerBooks and the entire school system got them. And obviously they had blocks in place and all this other stuff. But one of these kids who's crazy smart figured out the fact that if you went to a Brazilian porn site, the firewall filter wouldn't catch it. So all these kids knew about this Brazilian porn site that you could watch on your school laptop. I mean, it just happened like within the very first year, within months. Yeah. Like, and they figured that out, and obviously they shut that all down.
Well, we get that kid on curing cancer.
Yeah, right.
Like,
right. Yeah, a better battery, right? So there's.
I love that you jumped from curing cancer to just a better battery. Right. Such an old man. Such an old man.
Right.
I mean, we could cure cancer, or we could just get
better batteries.
We could just fix this damn problem of these batteries always dying.
But that was a pretty good spectrum, I think.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah. So there are some pretty common themes that are out there that I would highly recommend folks just really quick Google. Some of them, again, don't let the stuff in your bedroom. Right? If your child or young adult is in their formative years, you're going to have to figure that out.
Yeah.
So some of the rules that I've heard that have worked really, really well socially within a family demographic are that they can use the devices in public spaces. So they set up like a work area, or the kitchen table is the area that if you're going to be on a computer, laptop, or tablet, you've got to be there, or maybe at the couch with everybody else while they're watching TV. You can do stuff like that, but you can't sequester it, go off somewhere, and utilize it. You can't have unfettered, unlimited access.
Yeah.
Right.
And I know we just kind of feels like we just made a huge leap to porn. I've been talking about social media. But,
yeah.
No, but the reality is that social media right now is also just a platform to advertise pornography. I mean, like Instagram is an OnlyFans gateway.
Oh my gosh, I get invites. I bet I had 7 this morning.
Our podcast Instagram.
Yeah.
Several fake accounts or whatever, or yesterday, something popped up. Somebody liked, you always know. It's like it's like every post you've ever made. All of a sudden, one account just starts liking all of them, and they've started following you.
Yeah.
And then, boop, then you get a DM.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's either a fake promotion, like promote on podcast. UK/now, or it's come check out my OnlyFans account.
Right.
So I don't want people to hear us think we're like making a huge leap. We are not.
No. But the reason we bring it up is the fact that if you're going to arrest the devices or secure them in some way, shape, or form, there are multiple benefits.
Yeah.
Right. And that's one that is very prolific. It's out there. It's very much like social. Right. So so there's that. I have friends, and I saw some of this stuff around family time, like meal time, sacrosanct. So there's a very low level social impact that when you're together with other people and you take your phone out and you plop it on the table, that means that you're not worth my focus. Mm-hmm. Right? You're kind of secondary, because if something comes up here, I'm just going to, hold on just a second, I just need to, do that, right, kind of thing. And there's, that becomes kind of socially numbing, right, when you're doing that all the time. So there are a lot of families now who are kind of arresting their devices. They're not allowed on the table. They gather them up. If you're all in the car together, they gather them all up. They go on the center console. Maybe you use one for a map, right? That kind of thing. And I've even have some friends who do device-free vacations. So you're competing with the world, so you better make sure it's an awesome vacation, right? But the devices go away, right? You got one designated device that you're going to use for emergencies or maps or whatever you might need, right? And then that's it. That's pretty cool stuff as well.
Those are great ideas.
Yeah. Couple more along those lines. If you're in a social group, right? And Simon Sinek talked about this, and it's pretty cool. He says literally with their friends, they have one person who's kind of the designated device person, the DD, right? Everybody else leaves their phones. So they're the ones who get the Uber. They're the ones who figure out the reservation. They're the ones who buy the tickets for the movie or whatever. And then they all go to dinner together in this device-free environment. Yeah. Right. And then they only use this one phone for very specific things. And he said socially it's very invigorating. It's a lot of fun. And you start to really engage again at a different level. There's not this, hey, you're second because there's anything could come up here, right, kind of thing. And that really struck home with me, right? I mean, every time I sit down, right? I mean, we're at band practice. And we've got our devices up. We're getting things, got our phones out, right, and stuff. I can't think of a scenario recently, other than this past weekend that you described, like where there are things like we'll even be on a boat and everybody will have their phones out. We're surrounded by water, right? It's really, really interesting. Work-wise, so when you're at work. One of the guidances, and I think Simon went through there was so much stuff out. There's really cool ideas. They use, you can't bring your a cell phone into a conference room, right? It doesn't end up on the table. It doesn't end up in your pocket. You just don't bring it, right? You don't stand out front and like, hey, and he used the example. He said, hey, you're sitting there, and the next thing you know, somebody says, hey, I saw that your dad's back in the hospital. I'm really sorry about that. Oh, hey, wow, thank you. Yeah, he's doing a lot better. I really appreciate you. And all of a sudden you start to build relationships, because this generation right now that is our future is horrible at relationships. Yeah. Horrible. And here it is, right? There's the reason why. Really, really interesting stuff. The one other example that I'll give you is the fact that so there's this like assumption now, right? That it's acceptable. Yeah. Right. It's totally acceptable. Like this is just now such a big part, and it's so important, right? And he kind of points to companies, but also families, you're going to have to talk about this thing. You've got to address it.
Yeah.
It can't be a tool for grounding. It can't just be leverage all the time. You're going to have to figure out how to convey the concept to your family and even engage your friends. Talk to your friends about it, right? The fact that, hey man, you mind if you just put your phone away? I just want to catch up with you. Those kinds of things. And I think that at first people will be like, hey, my freedom. But then you're doing it out of a true concern for how things should be, maybe, right?
Yeah.
And I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, I can't imagine how that conversation would go, but
yeah, these are things to try.
Yeah, and with different people, some people would be like, yeah, totally. Other people would be like,
control freak, what do you want? Yeah.
You think you're better than me?
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I do. No, I think I'm
right. I don't want to tell you.
No,
so
I
put
think
that damn thing down.
I think I'm better than that damn phone.
Right. Yes. There you go. I know I'm better than that phone. That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting stuff.
You're talking about these things, and I'm going into viewer mode.
Yeah.
Like I'm just watching it and I'm processing. I'm thinking. So if I'm like, but I'm just thinking about. I have a handful of people that I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
That I'm like, man, I wish I had some time with you, not on your phone.
Yeah. And that it's amazing how much this has become an accepted portion of our reality. And we're going to have a whole episode about reality, right? So, I know some folks are going to be like, what's reality? You can't define reality. And, we can talk about Jordan Peterson and all the other stuff, but the fact that this feels really real, right?
Yeah.
And the fact that we're having a dialogue, I'm growing and hearing some of the things that you're dealing with and the wisdom that you're sharing with me through experience, right?
Yeah.
I'm getting a lot of joy out of that. That's one other thing really quickly I wanted to make sure that we hammered this week is the fact that there is an enormous difference between joy and happiness, right? Joy comes from a centered knowledge, right, and identity, right? And happiness comes from the world, your environment. Mm-hmm. Right, and it is not fixed. It's not guaranteed. It doesn't last very long. It's a vapor, right? Where joy is something that lasts and gets tested and grows. Right, it becomes a power, if you will. Right, and so it's really interesting because a lot of the folks resonate to the fact that they utilize this thing because it makes them happy, but when they're questioned around the concept of joy, they're like, I don't get any joy. If joy hits these 5 or 6 things as kind of the qualifications for joy, none of that comes through this, right?
Right.
Really, really interesting stuff.
Yeah. I think it's worth everybody just quantifying for themselves. What does joy look like for you?
Yeah.
Like, do like an inventory of what you think you're getting out of being connected.
Yeah.
And what you're actually getting. Do an inventory of what you think gives you joy.
Yeah.
Be honest with yourself.
And I would make sure that you look up joy and happiness to make sure it's a clear understanding in your mind of what joy is versus what happiness is. Because a lot of folks are going to say, well, that's the same thing. It's not.
Yeah.
Right? Joy is, it's kind of the best, it's a power, right? That's within you, mm-hmm. right? That bolsters you.
But like you said, it comes with an identity that is known.
Yeah.
An identity that is known, and
yep.
It also comes with self-awareness.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we are phone aware.
Yeah.
So those are some great tools for us, and then it's our job to help those who can't help themselves. So like
yes.
My daughter, it's my job to help her because she doesn't know what she doesn't know.
Yeah.
She doesn't know if she's getting wrapped up in something, and
she might think she does.
Yeah,
but she doesn't.
And so I found some resources that are at most $25 a month, some down to like $11 a month. There's some resources to monitor. Like the only ways that we just have to monitor. We have to have eyes on it.
Yeah.
And it's a lot easier than, right now we're going through the mode of give me your phone. At the end of the day, give me your phone, and we comb through everything.
Yeah.
But if we had some more peace of mind of like something else that was monitoring it, and we would just it would just flag it and give us an error message. I feel like we would seem less like dictators. I mean, parents are always going to seem like a dictator, but we would seem less like a dictator, and it'd be more relational. We wouldn't be worrying about combing through everything all day. We would just be worrying about the flags, right?
Yep.
So a couple of those resources, and it's more than just watching your kids' social media. Like Aura's out there, and that Aura, A-U-R-A, and so for a family,
A-U-R-A,
yeah,
got it.
For a family, it's $25 a month.
Yeah,
and these companies don't sponsor us.
No, these are not advertisements.
No, these are not advertisements. These are just things that the tools that I have used or seen people use that have helped. So it's $25 a month for a family package, and you could get like $5 or $10 a month. I think like $5 a month is a personal, 15 is a couple, and then 25 a month is a family.
Yeah,
but it's more than so. It monitors social media. It monitors. You can monitor geolocation. You can monitor fraud. Like,
oh wow, okay.
So like identity theft and stuff like that. So it's a big suite of things. But it's the priciest one, $25 a month. But that's one meal for one person.
Oh yeah, versus the consequence of possibly not. Yeah, it's a no-brainer.
So then, just under that, there is a monitoring service called Bark.
Okay,
it's $14 a month.
B-A-R-K.
Yep, and it's very similar to Aura, but it doesn't do all the identity theft stuff and stuff. It's just monitoring, and you could set up PIN codes and stuff. And then the next two are closer to Bark than they are Aura. So the next one is Family Keeper. It's $11 a month, and it was rated above the next one I'm going to say, but I think that's because the next one is a Christian-based one. It's cheaper, and also it's probably because it's cheaper. But so Family Keeper, you can monitor all of that stuff as well. It's similar to Bark. I think you get less of a maybe no. It's a lot like you guys use Life 360.
Oh, we used that a ton. It was magical for us. Awesome tool.
And Life 360 is another one.
Yeah. What I liked about Life 360 was I could see how fast my kids were going. I could see where they went. I could see if they made any sudden stops. It had an alarm that would go off if they felt like it had been in an accident. I could tell them their battery's low. I could do all these kinds of alerts. It was we still use it. My daughter's in LA, and I check it all the time just to make sure she's cool and doing okay, and
Yeah. So those are all. I don't know about how much Life 360 is.
Yeah, it's like oh gosh, $12 maybe for the family a month or something like that.
Oh,
for four of us. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the last one is Covenant Eyes. So that's specifically like if you're Covenant Eyes is what it is. It's COVENANT and then Eyes, EYES. Put this number back on.
Okay.
Covenant Eyes is more specifically like if you're having a problem with pornography or I think now a huge problem in terms of consuming content is like pornography is always a problem, but also like you mentioned last week, the seeking out of materials surrounding suicide.
Oh yeah.
Like how or
Yep.
What is it like, or all these different things.
Right. So what you're saying there is triggers that would help you notice that your kids are starting to look into this.
Well, it's a firewall,
right.
number one, so it won't
let them
access.
Gotcha.
And then you can add stuff. But
somebody.
So
interesting.
Somebody I know
Very cool.
was just saying, hey, we use Covenant Eyes, but it's not just for porn. We have a child who's struggling with suicidal ideation, and we can also use that to safeguard them from looking up things surrounding that online or YouTube videos or stuff. It just flags stuff. And that's
very cool.
That's $18.99 a month. That one is Christian based. I don't know if Family Keeper is or not, but I think if you don't want it to be Christian based or whatever, that's totally fine. Just please make sure you keep an eye. You find the cobra. And
find the cobra.
And not just find that cobra, but you have to also keep the cobra out. And how do you do that is by transparency. There's a I don't know if I should say their name. Somebody that I work with. And they have this catchphrase. It's just like a phrase. And it's confusion is the enemy of commitment. And I see that in this context, committing to each other as a family or as a society or whatever.
I like that.
We just got to get rid of any of the confusion and everything out on the table. And it sucks. It sucks to be, it sucks to be a guy in his 20s and say to another person, I'm struggling with pornography. I need your help. Because Covenant Eyes, there are two different apps you can get. One is the person who's trying to. It's like the parent and subordinate kind of,
right. So you've got a sponsor buddy that gets notified if you're trying to access or something like that. Yeah.
Also, I totally just lost my train of thought. So, or like it sucks to be like a guy in his 20s and have to tell somebody. Maybe it's your dad. Maybe it's a friend. Maybe it's but hey, I'm struggling with this. It also sucks to be a young female or a female in her 20s or whatever and have to say I'm really struggling with self-image issues and this, or guy. It sounds like I just I was just stereotyping issues, but I just mean you have to get in community. You have to have someone else help you, and you have to put safeguards in place. If you're a male or female who's struggling with identity and not looking good enough or not being the part, then Pinterest and Instagram is probably not good for you.
Yeah, it's probably not the best.
If you're a guy or a girl, if you're somebody who's struggling with pornography or with whatever, like if you're struggling with pornography, then you know what? Unfettered internet access and TikTok is probably
and
Reddit is probably not good for you.
Not going to be a great thing.
So
and taking your devices in the bedroom or sequestering them silently. I mean, a lot of folks live alone, right? So that they're going to have to figure those tricks out, and they're there, right? There are cheats that can help you.
Yeah. And like Spencer said, it's literally like heroin.
Yeah,
legal heroin.
Yeah, legal heroin. That's crazy.
And we can't start to live a life in phase. We can't start to make a change as a community towards something better until we get rid of this. You know what I mean? And it's like, we all have a sickness, and we can't just keep treating symptoms.
Right. Well, and we're not fear guys, right? I mean, it's not like we don't want to spread fear. We're trying to arm folks with the fact that there's so much data coming out now that there's some worse things coming our way that could be navigated if we get our hands around it now, right? And it's going to take years to start to correct, because we've got years and years of folks who have gone through their formative years, unlimited access to this thing, and it is showing up in their social lives, in their personal lives, and their health. It's we've got some work to do for sure.
I think we can do it.
Yeah,
I'm also for sure. These 2 episodes have been great, and I promise, hopefully, I will be less It's just having, especially
No,
my,
man.
my
Yeah.
daughter. I've got 2 daughters, and I got a son in between, and watching, and then seeing myself, seeing the way that it affects me towards them and my wife, and whatever. And so, I'm excited. I'm really happy about what we're doing, and I think, I think that I think we're on a good path. I think that
Awesome.
Yeah.
Me too. So what do you think? One thing I would just want to say really quickly on behalf of Inphase Media and the production team here. He's sitting right over there. But the production team, that we're so thankful that the Bridge Church is lending us all of this amazing facility and equipment. And nothing that we've shared today is either endorsed or necessarily the views of the Bridge Church.
Right.
They just are kind enough to allow us to use their facilities and kind of get this out into the world. But we're super thankful of that. If you've got any questions, check us out. We've got a website called inphasemedia.com, and you can also check us out on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, even though we just talked about social media.
And Twitter.
And Twitter, right? But
Yeah.
those are some good, the positive powers of that, right? Next week, I was going to maybe throw out, tell me what you think, but I was going to throw out that we maybe hover over joy versus happiness.
Yeah, I think that's great, and it might be us figuring that out too.
Yeah, right. I'm excited to learn for
Yeah.
sure. So on behalf, God, I always screw that up. On behalf of Inphase Media and the Inphase Podcast, I'm Tony Maniette.
He is, in fact, Tony Maniette. Yeah,
And this is Dan Kratz.
I'm Dan, and hey, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.